In this lecture, we're going to take a closer look at the change tracker in DB context. This is not something that you're going to work with all the time, but it's something that's good to know in case you're running into issues with DB context and you want to know exactly what's going on in there in terms of state of your objects. Also, if you want to implement an audit trail, you can get the state of objects from change tracker and dump it into an audit trail. So in this code, I've got 3 examples. One for adding an object, one updating an object, and another removing an object. This is exactly like what you saw in previous lectures. Now let's get the state of these objects from the change tracker. So context.changeTracker.entries. This method has 2 overloads. One is generic, the other is not. So with generic method, we can get, let's say, all author entries. Or you can use the other one to get all entries in the DB context. Okay, now I'm going to iterate over this collection. And display the state on the console. Now I put a breakpoint here and run the application in debug mode so we can inspect each entry in detail. All right, now we go to watch window. Okay, each entry is of type DB entity entry. Let's expand it. So we've got 2 useful properties here, current values and original values. Original values can be used when you're editing objects. So you can get the values before edit was done. And current values, of course, returns the current values. Now both these properties have another property called property names. Let's expand it. So we have got 2 properties for which we have values in the current values object. Now to clarify, this is my first entry, which is this example here. So here I've created an author object and set its name to new author. Now inside this property names, we have 2 properties. Let's expand result view. So we've got ID and name. Name is here because I set it here. But editing framework also automatically sets ID to 0. Now, if you want to get the current values, both these objects, current values and original values, have indexers. So you can use these property names as string indexers. Let me show you an example. So entry that current values of name. New author, which is what I said here. Or if you want to look at ID, entry that current values of ID. I made a mistake here. This is case sensitive. So there is no such a property like this here. There you go. So ID is 0. Now let's take a look at another entry. So I'm going to continue execution with F10. Here is another entry. Let's expand this. So the state is modified. Remember I told you each entry has a state like added, modified, deleted, and unchanged? This is what I was talking about. So when you call save changes, Entity Framework looks at the state of these entries and based on them creates SQL queries. Now let's take an example where I update an object. Let's look at the current and original values. So current values of name is updated, which is what you see here. Now I'm going to change these to original values. Entry the original values of name. So it was Eric Wise, one of the authors on Udemy. This entry also has another useful property, entity, which returns the actual entity behind this entry. In this case, this author object here. All right, now let's look at another example. F10. Here's the last one. The example for removing an object. So note that the state is deleted. And in this case, current values does not make sense. That's why we get an exception if we access this. Because when you're removing objects, you only have original values, which you can access here. Now let me stop the debugger. This entry also has a useful method called reload. So entry.reload. This can sometimes be useful if you have edited an entry, but you change your mind and you want to reload it from the database. So you simply call that here. So again, what you saw in this lecture was not something that you would be using on a daily basis. So all I want you to take away from this lecture is that you can access the change tracker property of a DB context to see what's going on inside a DB context. I hope you enjoyed this lecture and thank you for watching.